All right, perfect. Thank you, Adam. I'm the founder of The First Prototype. We're a software design and development firm that specializes in mobile app development. We have had more than 30 apps published on the iOS and Android stores, and two apps were top 5 on the iOS App Store and Android Play Store. And then we had 2 other apps that were top 30 in finances. So the first one was utilities, the second one was finances. So pretty good experience over there. I've been, pretty lucky with the clients that we get. And, they love our enthusiasm. They love our innovation, our foresight and experience. And so they're able to, leverage us to improve whatever they have or build whatever they need. And so I'm going to share all my secrets with you all today. Thank you so much for joining. So who am I? That's me in high school. I'm a nobody. You guys are probably more popular than I was. I got to study in the University of Texas at Dallas, studied engineering there, did a few coding engineering competitions, and that kind of got me more excited about the world that's out there and how there's so much stuff happening, but there are not that many people who are pursuing all of these awesome stuff, awesome new advancements in technology. And then I did a coding bootcamp for 3 months. It was free. I didn't really pay for it. It was more like self-paced, but I made sure that I did a really good work. Over there, I learned C#. And after the coding bootcamp, based on my project that I really liked, a company hired me. And so the reason I'm sharing this is because, right now there's probably many of you who are like, oh, I wonder what it's like. How do I get into mobile development? Do I need to have a CS degree? Do I need a master's and blah, 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 In reality, you really don't. You just need that one opportunity. I was a junior developer at Exigo, and that's where I told them I was interested in mobile development. They got me in. And I got into consulting. I built, you see that app over there, My Spectrum. It has over 2 million downloads now. I've been working on that for a year and a half, and we got it from like about 100,000 downloads to over 2 million. And, it hit number 5 on the iOS utilities for the App Store. Moved to Toronto and, have just been traveling quite a bit. And also I love to volunteer with the kids. And so for 2 years in a row, I was the IT coach for first robotics competitions in high schools, one in Denver, the other in Toronto. But essentially, just like you guys, I do not come from like a special background. We're just going to talk a bit about what's going to, iOS versus Android. What is this hybrid that people keep talking about, cross-platform, PWA? What is all of this stuff? And then we'll dive into the different frameworks, and then we'll talk a bit about what you should do if you have an app idea. We'll talk about some backend stuff that happens to be, go hand in hand with mobile development, and then I'll just demo some mobile development technologies out there so you guys can get started. So iOS versus Android. This is, people fight over this all the time. People ask me, hey, do you use an iOS, do you use an Android? I do cross-platform development mostly. I do some native development as well. But for me, that means that I have to have both iOS and Android. But now it's like, okay, where do I put my SIM card? So because I use a Mac computer, so Macs have really good integrations with iPhones, and so I primarily use my iPhone. But like right now, I have 2 iPhones. One is for development, and I have one Android phone, which is also for development. So now it's like, okay, well, I'm not really partial, but why do people even care about developing apps for the iPhone? Very, very popular question I get from clients that come to me. Why should we build an iPhone app? And so versus an Android app? Because if you look on the left, over here in this chart, you'll notice that almost like close to 75% of people are just in some age groups are using Android versus the iPhone. So it's like, why even care about this 25% of people? And so that's where, you know, statistics really comes into play, and you see that if you only cater to those 75% of people, you're actually losing out on revenue. Because and this is actually pretty funny, because if you look at this, compared to the Android, iPhone users spend a lot more money on the iPhone, on apps and app features. So if you want to make money, build it for the iPhone. You know, if you're trying to go for reach, so there's like revenue versus reach. Revenue, you know, if you're focusing on revenue, trying to make more money, focus on the iPhone. If you're trying to get your app downloaded by billions of people, go for Android, you just may not get as much money. That's why, you know, it's good to just create an app for both. Again, you know, this chart, this is just like a lot of research done by big firms, and they all basically say the same thing. iPhone users essentially spend a lot more money on their device. Now, that is from a marketing perspective. So now, what about from a development perspective? Is it easier to build an Android app versus an iOS app? Is it easier to maintain and all that stuff? So from my experience, because I've been doing this for so many years now, and I've been doing both iOS and Android, Android did not really have a solid foundation on top of which it was built. And so what they did is they're like, okay, you know what? This is like the most basic item, but it doesn't seem to have all the features that I need. Let me build another foundation. And so they kind of shifted massively. And so the apps that were older were very, very difficult to port over to this newer technology. And this goes because now this technology is over 10 years old. And so, you know, we're seeing that effect in a lot of apps like not getting updated. And so the iPhone, they did remain consistent for the most part. They did have a few glitches here and there, but they were, you know, fairly consistent, and they were able to maintain a really good quality for their apps. And, you know, that's probably something that you all notice whenever you use an iPhone versus an Android phone. On an iPhone, you can feel that animation that is naturally baked in to the iPhone, versus on Android, you have to almost make the design to where, you know, you actually animate it manually. Stuff is changing, obviously, but again, you know, this is stuff that was baked in since the beginning for the iPhone. Now, I get this all the time, and, you know, all the mobile developers get this all the time. What is native development versus hybrid versus cross-platform versus PWA? When do I use it? This is a good flow chart, but in essence, the stuff on the left, you see over here, it's essentially Cordova is what, you know, is the category to come under. So Cordova is essentially a website that's wrapped into a mobile app, but it's not supported anymore, so you can't use it anymore. But there are ways of getting about it. But that was considered hybrid, where there's no native code whatsoever. It's just a website. When they click on it, they're seeing a website load up. And I mean, there were ways of making it performant, but, you know, you could tell that this app is not really native. It's someone trying to create an app and publish it. And, you know, you essentially don't get any returns out of that investment anyway, so it's kind of pointless. On the other hand, you have cross-platform, and cross-platform is where the industry is at right now. So if you look at that over here, these three, they're basically the leaders at this moment. React Native, Flutter, and Xamarin, very, very popular. And Xamarin is owned by Microsoft, Flutter is owned by Google, and React Native is owned by Facebook. So that's basically why also they're the top leaders. And we are going to today look at some code that's React Native and look at some code that's Xamarin. And on the right side, we have progressive web apps. So progressive web apps are not exactly hybrid apps, but they're kind of similar. But they're essentially websites that are made to look like an actual app, made to communicate with the native components, so you can actually use a camera and all that functionality. And sometimes you can't even tell that it's not a PWA. And so a lot of times people are like, oh, do you even need a cross-platform app? Which is a great question. You know, sometimes you can just use a PWA instead. And it's easier to test because you don't need an iPhone and Android phone to test. You can just test on a browser. It'll be kind of similar. Ionic is one of the most popular ones out there for PWAs, but you don't really hear much from, PWA developers and things like that. Like, it's usually cross-platform developers or native developers is where stuff is at right now. There's a lot of limitations. For example, like you cannot show push notifications for PWAs. And so people kind of stay away from it because push notifications has a very high click-through rate. CTR is very high. It's even higher than emails and all these other marketing tools that are out there. So marketers love this high CTR, and so they stay away from PWAs basically. And then you have your native apps. So native apps are very similar to cross-platform apps, but you essentially code it differently in different languages. So Xcode is, this symbol is the Xcode symbol, but you're actually using Swift or Objective-C to develop the native app. And, it's essentially owned by Apple. And then this is the Android Studio where you use Java or Kotlin in order to develop your native app. So companies try to stay away as much as possible from native app development because it's very hard to maintain. It's hard to find good talent that's affordable, that will do native app development. So even if you try to source talent from a different country, like, in the East, you'll still have to pay a ton of money. And usually it's not worth it. Like, I've done work with so many companies now, especially for mobile development. They always really stay away from outsourcing because the quality is not good at all. So it's, definitely something to consider. So that is, this, I could go on for days and days. There's like probably so many studies done about it, but this is just to wrap your head around, what kind of tech stack do you want to use? If you're a developer who is trying to get into mobile development and you're like, what technology should I learn? What should I do? So each of these actually also use a different programming language. So React Native uses JavaScript or TypeScript. So if you have knowledge of that, dive into that. Flutter uses Dart, which is a different programming language, but it's kind of easy to learn. Xamarin uses C#. And so if you have C# experience, it's very easy to dive in and create mobile apps today. Over here, like I said, it's Java, Kotlin, and Swift, Objective-C. Here's, again, similar stuff. I did a deeper dive into cross-platform development because I know the other two speakers are focusing on one platform. So I was like, let me just focus on the cross-platform aspect of it. So again, Ionic, like I said, is PWA. And so these are just basically like different things that you have to consider when you're choosing which technology stack to choose. So now if you have an app idea and you're like, okay, I have this app idea, I need to learn how to code. Well, that's not really the right thing to do. So what is the right thing to do if you want to build an app? Well, as I said before, the first step that you should probably do is brainstorm the app. Try to think of it, who's going to use it, what's your target market, there's so many different tools out there that I highly recommend. One of them is the business model canvas. Google that and you find this paper, try to fill it out and see, is my business a viable business? Does it make sense? Am I going to be able to make any money? So definitely brainstorm a ton. And then, don't go directly to a developer. Don't go and start learning development. Development is far away. It's the last step. You don't even need to worry about development. Gather requirements. Okay, what do I want this to have? If I want a feature for flights, what kind of flights am I providing? What kind of limitations do I want to have? For version 1, version 2, do I want all these features in the first version? What if like my idea fails? I don't want to spend all my money and not have food. So definitely, try to reduce scope as much as possible for your MVP, your minimum viable product. As soon as you're done gathering requirements, you move on to the lo-fi design phase and the user experience phase. So you draw these rough sketches and you're like, okay, as soon as the app launches, you go to the login screen, you click on sign up, you sign up, and you get all this information. So it's all these rough sketches that you build out. And there's so many tools out there. And then once you have these rough sketches, usually a lot of clients, they're like, actually, that doesn't make sense. Yeah, like it looks like we're going to have 50 pages in this app. This is insane. We don't even have that much budget. We want to cut it down to 20 pages. And I'm like, yeah, like you're the one who wants so many pages. Like, how can I cut it down? And they're like, yeah, okay, maybe we don't want this feature for now. So lo-fi design phase is very, very important. And then the high fidelity user interface design. So this phase is very, very important. Usually you can go to Fiverr. We have a designer. There's so many design studios out there. You ask them for a UI design for your idea, and they will beautify it so much. You'll be like, whoa, this is like going to be the best app out there. And they'll use a tool like Figma or Sketch or Adobe Experience Design to put all the assets in the right way and give developers the exact values that they'll need. And I'll share my screen in a little bit and I'll show you what kind of details tools like Figma provide, which help developers a ton. Once you have that, and this is stuff until now is everything that you could have done by yourself without learning any code. You don't need any code for all those steps. Once you have the high fidelity UI design, you can go to a consulting agency. You can come to us. You can go to like so many companies out there, and you ask them for an estimate of work. You're like, hey, I have this idea. This is the UI design. How many hours do you think it'll take? How much do you think this will cost? And so you get an estimate back, and along with time and money. Then you make that decision. Hey, where do you want to go? And you decide what tech stack you want to use. So remember how I showed you there's so many technologies. So you decide, okay, I want to go with this for this reason. And then for the front end, like basically the mobile app. And the back end, you choose, okay, what kind of mobile back end do I need? And I'll go through some mobile backends as well. And then then you start your app development. You don't find your development team until you decide what your tech stack is, because usually the mobile development team, they're great at PWAs, but they don't have any experience with Xamarin, and like now you're stuck with amateurs, whereas like it would have been so easy for you to get like really good developers. So you set up your team, make sure that they're doing their development. You fix all the bugs, make sure all the edge cases, usually the edge cases are the ones that take the most amount of time to fix. And so, you test that out thoroughly, and, you start marketing before the development's over. So you see, okay, it's going to take us like 2 months or 3 months to publish this. Let me start marketing. And it's not just any marketing, it's like mobile specific marketing. There's a lot of mobile app marketing firms out there. And just basically release the app. And then obviously you continue marketing. And then, I just briefly, I just want to talk about like mobile backends. So backend is where you store the data. And what's increasingly popular is NoSQL backends for um, for mobile app development. The advantage of NoSQL development is that you don't need a backend developer in order to build this. It's an easy skill for front-end developers to also pick up. And there's an example that I share. And then there's also the world's simplest backend that you could use, which is essentially a Google Sheet. So you can store data in a Google Sheet. And so there's a game called Number Bomb that I would definitely recommend you all download right now. It's free, NUMB or BOMB, on the iOS and Android store. So please download it right now, and you will see that it stores the data of winners. So if you win the game, it'll store your data, and it stores it on Google Sheets. So you don't even have to pay for a Google Sheet, because generally, otherwise you'd have to pay for a server, for backend, and all that stuff. So, cool stuff like that. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to continue sharing. I'm not done yet. I will show you guys what stuff looks like now. So the first example I'm going to give is of the game Number Bomb. And it's an open source game. It's developed on the App Store, but it's open source, which means that the code is available. So you can look at all the code that's going on over here. So this is the code. You can download it, you can make changes to it, and then you can publish it on the App Store again. It's free to do so. And that's why, and I mean, the button to download the code is right there. So you just download zip. And there's so many games like this that are open source, that are free to download. Usually they'll have no ads, and, just for people to play and, improve people's portfolios and things like that. So this is something that I have downloaded, and I just double tapped. So let me show you exactly what I did after downloading. Oh, wrong button. So where did that go? Yeah, so I downloaded it, and then I just double tapped on the solution SLN file. I double tapped on it. I had the software that's free called Visual Studio installed, and it opened this, and I just hit the play button over here, and it built it on this thing called a simulator, and it built it on my device that you see over here. So you see this over here on the screen, but I can use something called Visor in order to mirror that. And, that's essentially how we develop. And then I can make a small change. So if you notice over here, now you see both of them on my screen. I'm going to change this from enter your gamer tag to enter your gamer tags. So enter your, I'm just searching for this text. I go there, and then I change this to, and I add an S, and then I hit save. And if you look at this, it says gamer tags, and it says gamer tags over there. So something called hot reload. It's pretty nice. It's not too complicated to to implement. So it's pretty nice. And there's so many resources out there. This specific technology is one of those three. It's called Xamarin. It's cross-platform. This is Android, and this is iOS. And essentially you put all your code in stuff called XAML files that are kind of like HTML. It's kind of neat. And yeah, it's not too difficult to get started with. The other example that we have here, and I may not have too much time because I know I'm already running so late, but over here I have another example where, so we were using Visual Studio for Xamarin because it requires an IDE, or an integrated development environment. But React Native, on the other hand, does not require that. You can just use a text editor like WordPad or something like that, Notepad, in order to do to do React Native. So this example over here, we just essentially let's see, yarn run iOS. Yeah, let's see if that builds right now. But we have simple code. It's just a blank app, and I just made a few changes. And I said yarn run iOS, which basically says, as you notice over here, there's no play button, so it's a little difficult. You could say, because everything is basically just text. So you just like put everything in text. And so the text basically says, oh, look, it successfully built and installed and then launched the app on your phone. So I go over here, and as you see over here, I have the app. It's a pretty simple app. It just says hello, and then I have two buttons. But it performs an advanced functionality where you tap on it and it changes the app icon on your phone. So you look at that, it says check, you hit canceled, and it changes the app icon to a canceled button. And so in order to implement this, it's only an iOS functionality for now. You have to perform some code magic, you could say. You add something called a native module, and then just basically 4 files that you change. But yeah, that's basically it. This code is also available on GitHub, so you can download the React Native code as well. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, feel free to reach out, and I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Awesome, Samir. Thank you so much for that, mate. I always find your talks to like the perfect level of technical, like it's not like super in the weeds. I'm like, I get it. I understand what he's talking about. So thanks so much for that. I think we're going to ask, we know what it's time for, hand clap thank you emojis, or you can just straight up say thank you like Matthew has done. Yeah, so we'll get some emojis happening there, show your appreciation and love for Samir. And yeah, look, if you do have any questions, it certainly now is Q&A time. So we're going to jump over to our question tab here. So Mahan has asked, would you say cross-platform applications would ever exceed the quality of a native application?
That's a really good question. So I think for most companies that have money, the most important part is quality. They don't really care about, just having an app out there. And so they're like, okay, in terms of quality, should we or should we not do a native app that's not cross-platform? So what native apps have that that cross-platform apps don't is that they're very quick to get the latest updates. Cross-platform tools, generally it takes a little bit more time to get the latest updates, to get packages, because a lot of people don't really use those niche functionalities. One really good example is NFC technology. So every new iPhone that comes out comes with more enhancements to NFC technology, and so they release code that allows these enhancements. But because people have not created packages in order to implement that, so it takes some time. So for example, one line of code, for example, in native development would take me 4 files to create. Like I would need to create 4 different files in order to run one line of code in native development from my cross-platform code, because that code is only specific to iOS versus Android. So if there's functionality that exists on both, it's very easy to do. But then if there's some very niche technology that only exists on one, then that's what takes a very long time to implement. And it's really you just have to keep in mind that 99% of apps are basically forms. You see some information, you fill out a form, you hit submit. And so for most apps, you don't really need it. Like a bill pay app, like there's a form, you fill it, you submit. Yeah, it has to be secure, which is why it's good to have an app. But for the most part, it really, really depends on what you're trying to build. Yeah, if you're trying to build something like AR, VR, like you'll get good performance with native development, but then again, it'll take you so much time to build it. Something like Unity already has these really great packages you can just pop those in and implement that native functionality.
Thanks for that. We have another question for you, mate. We question here from Ibn Wallace, it looks like the user's name is. Ibn's asked, if I bought a front-end designer on Fiverr, what steps should I take next? Also, what steps should be taking for making a simple e-commerce application?
Yeah, great question. Okay, so that's a very, very good example to use. Remember, first step, brainstorming. So brainstorm whether or not you need a mobile app, what kind of mobile app you should have, and then create designs. So, don't do anything before you gather the requirements and create those lo-fi designs. It doesn't have to have any color, it doesn't have to have any font or anything fancy. It just has all the pages laid out with boxes containing like some information that is going to be displayed. Like, okay, flights is going to have this departure, arrival times, and submit button. So once you have all the pages laid out, which might be 40 or 30 different types of pages, then you get a designer from anywhere. You can use Fiverr, like I said, and they will understand it. Once you give it to them in the right way, they'll be like, yeah, this makes total sense. These are lo-fi designs. You just want to make them hi-fi designs. I have all the requirements laid down. Let's go ahead and build it out. And then once you have your hi-fi designs, you'd essentially try to engage a developer. A lot of times, especially for e-commerce, because it's a very common use case, there'll be themes that they can use. So you can take a template that's for an e-commerce app, and you just fill it out with products. So there's so many ways of going about it. You just have to essentially choose the right way. And then there's a lot of like companies like Shopify that have integrations with different app companies as well, where it's like, okay, you just put in your Shopify code, and now we can brand this app for you, and you pay like $1,000, $5,000, and you're done, in no time.
Nice one. Thanks for the advice there. We have another question from Stephen. Stephen has asked, is there any automation tools for iOS that can open up other apps and click on buttons, interact with other apps, similar to web browsers automation with Selenium? It looks like you just disappeared. I'll just reread that question there.
Yeah.
Stephen has asked, are there any automation tools for iOS that can open up other apps and click on buttons and interact with other apps, similar to web browser automation with Selenium?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. Actually, I was talking to people on the team today about it, and like we've been discussing it the whole day. So there's a tool called Appium that is based on Selenium. So Selenium's open source, and there's a tool called Appium that's based on it. And Appium lets you do whatever you need on iOS and Android. So it's a very, very useful tool. One of the best things I like about Appium is that you can use whatever programming language with it. You can use Java, C#, Python, JavaScript, you name it. And a lot of times, like tools like BrowserStack are able to take those Appium scripts and run your automated testing. So Appium is really nice, and I highly recommend taking a look at it.